Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday the 12th of June comes to you from London. And we still have a little bit of a hangover in the UK with the UK election results at the end of last week. So we'll just look mostly at how that's affecting markets. But we see the dollar index is still bullish. It's above the cloud in the short term. We had quite a strong rise on Thursday, Friday, but we are still in the medium-term downtrend. Long-term uptrend, but medium-term we're still bearish. And we see here on the point and figure chart at least, there is quite a lot of resistance and downside pressure still on the dollar. So that's quite key. We've got a new downside target here, which on the 60-minute chart we see has given us a new downside target of about 3%, but that's not activated. So new lows in the dollar would be bad, and that would activate that downside. So still looking pretty bearish in the medium term. If we look at the euro, of course, that's conversely looking bullish in the medium term. We do have a new upside target, but the long-term picture is still bearish until we get these downside targets negated. So that's quite key. We have upside targets of 115, 118, but we are just maybe hitting a little bit of resistance on the weekly cloud. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Japanese yen, the dollar has made a short-term transition here as well. So we're seeing short-term bullish, but the medium and long-term picture is still bearish for the dollar against the yen. Sterling, of course, is the currency that all eyes are still on, really. And this downside target off the thrust on Friday of 123, which is 3% downside, still hangs over us. So bearish long term, medium term is holding on to its bullishness, but interestingly, this is a bit like a triple top here. 125.50 would probably be the level, certainly 125. If we fall through that, then that starts to get bearish again in the medium term for sterling. So still looks pretty bearish. Against the euro, of course, it's also bearish on all three time frames. Against the Swiss franc, it's bearish on all three time frames again. And against the Australian dollar, we're just holding the medium-term picture, but looks similar to the US dollar charts. But we do have these downside targets near side of 166.50, so that's about 1.5% downside. The US market fell back on Friday. The S&P was down, and so just closed the week out just slightly lower. Charts still bullish on all three time frames though, so this is just a counter trend move. On the Nasdaq, it was a bit more defined. We saw a sharp sell-off in tech stocks on Friday, and we are just coming through the cloud there, so it will be interesting to see how we open today. The Dow holding its bullishness, so blue chips were marginally unaffected, and the Russell 2000 holding most of its bullishness as well. So it was really in the tech that we saw those big falls. The S&P future, we see a little bit of gyration here, and that is just looking a little bit bearish, and the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.5%, so we may see further falls on the Nasdaq when we open today. FTSE 100 just coming back below this 7,500 level, so we're just sitting right on that level at the moment. Bearish below the cloud, so we're just seeing sentiment changing a little bit here in the short term on the FTSE. We did see a little bit of a relief rally on Friday on the currency basis, but that's been short-lived really, and sentiment in the UK is not great at the moment, short term, and we're seeing that in the FTSE 250 as well. The DAX is up this morning, up about 0.5%, so we're seeing that moving okay. Nikkei down about 0.5%, but holding on to its bullishness on all three charts. Hang Seng had a bit of a sell-off as well, but at the moment is still holding its bullishness. And Shanghai, much the same. The medium and long-term pictures on Shanghai yet to turn bullish, so the local market still looks a little bit worrying. The Sensex index, the Indian market, fairly flat over the last week or so, so we're just seeing that pausing for breath, but the long-term charts still look great. The Australian market continues to be below the cloud, so that's quite key as well. Brent crude, we're seeing here bearish below the cloud now in the medium term. Sold off very heavily last week, but we're just seeing now that it's teetering along the bottom. Downside targets to 46.70, that's the one to watch. This activated downside target of 36.27, also quite key. WTI we're seeing here is bearish below the cloud. So again, a very similar picture to Brent crude. US nat gas just struggling to hold this $3 level, just poking back below the cloud here. So looks like we'll see a little bit of a sell-off there as well. Looking at some of the softs, cocoa up quite strongly, nearly 3% up, but still a pretty mixed picture. We look at sugar, still below the cloud on all three time frames, so selling off about 0.5% there as well. As is wheat. It's bullish above the cloud in the short term, but the picture is pretty mixed. Going straight to gold, we see gold is in a bearish frame short term. We've got this 1263 target. We're nearly getting to that, but the long-term transition is still looking pretty assured in gold, so it's still bullish in the long term. Silver just hitting resistance here, so that's quite key too. 10-year Treasury yields sitting at 2.22%, so bullish in the short term, but the medium term is still a little bit bearish. Now looking at tech, as we said, we had to sell off. We're seeing this now in pretty well all the tech stocks. Apple sold off quite strongly. Google sold off quite strongly on Friday. Amazon also sold off quite strongly. Facebook also, and Microsoft as well. So we just saw that across the board really on Friday. It'll be interesting to see whether tech recovers this week. Keep an eye on those charts. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.